So today, we wanted to tackle the difficult subject of Agile being dead, which we hear a lot about these days. Um, and I'd like to get your thoughts as seasoned Agile coaches. What do you make of this idea that gets bandied around on LinkedIn and so forth? What does it mean to you? Do you think there's any truth in it? And any other thoughts that you have, any implications that you have? Let me start with you, Chris. What do you make of it?
Uh, it's been a while since I first noticed this whole Agile is dead thing. And, every time you looked at Medium or LinkedIn, there was another post screaming, Agile is dead or Agile is dying, here's why. Um, I got really curious about what people were saying. So I started to read a number of them. And a theme started to emerge here. And I thought, well, or a couple of themes anyway. And it's funny because I asked ChatGPT to do some analysis on them. And I said, look for anything that says Agile and the word dead or dying and look for what people are complaining about. What is the reason why Agile is dying? And it thought about it for a while, and it came up with some bits and pieces. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about all these because I think that the reasons it gave, and there are about five of them, I said just limited to the top five. I think they're connected to a degree because my very amateurish and by no means professional analysis on this is it's not about Agile because all of the complaints that I think people are talking about are from people on whom Agile has been inflicted, if you like, or those people trying to inflict Agile on others, and they fall into two camps. So what you get is those people saying Agile doesn't work in my context because you're trying to impose a framework, right? A rigid framework with rules and roles and events and that won't work in our context. There's those people. So Agile is dead. It's not going to work anymore. Then the other people who simply say organizations are not prepared to accept Agile. They're not ready. They're not willing. Their management get in the way, and you guys won't change. So there's those two very basic camps, I think, and this is what's going on. I don't think Agile itself is the problem. It's how it is being implemented or adopted.
So if I could summarize, maybe you're kind of saying that um, maybe it's a bit of a misnomer when people say Agile is dead. They're referring to something which isn't really Agile in your eyes, but some attempt at Agile by companies who are not really set up for it.
Uh, yes and no. I think it's more about the way. If for example we were to ask people, let's say we are coaching and we're walking into a squad or a tribe or a kind of department or teams, whatever, and we say to them, "What is it you're trying to get out of this agile adoption? Right? What is the purpose here for you in adopting these agile practices?" And they say to us, "Well, we know we have issues around. I'm going to make this up. The quality of the code we push out the door." We can then coaches, we can then say, right, we've got some advice for you on how to improve the code quality. Now what you've got is an agenda, you've got a purpose, a reason why Agile works. But then you don't have to impose an entire Scrum framework or SAFe framework or whatever else it is. You suddenly got a reason to adopt Agile.
Yes.
Right. So if your adoption becomes principle-led, for example, improve the quality of your output, that becomes a reason and a focal point for the practices that you teach. Okay. Whereas if you start telling them, again, making this up, you have to hold a daily stand-up meeting for 15 minutes every day, and everybody has to attend that meeting. It's like, what's the point? We sit around the same desk, we talk 15 times a day. Why do we need to have a separate meeting for that? That's just bureaucracy. It's rubbish. Agile is rubbish. It doesn't work. Okay. That's the problem. I think
Yes.
all the adoption stuff we do has to be targeted. There has to be a reason for it. And
Yeah.
that is why I believe it's not working. And that's why Agile
So I
is
think,
dying.
yeah, so it sounds like the approach to it is too obsessed with
The
the
framework.
yes, the kind of
Yeah.
tangibles, the
Yeah.
framework, the
The
process.
framework, the
And
method,
these
the
are the
process.
kind
Yeah.
of things that people can kind of hang on to. And
Exactly.
yet, by doing so, people forget entirely about the principles.
Yeah,
and
I agree. Yeah,
they go out the window. Let's come to Addy.
yeah.
What do you think?
So I think for starters, you introduced me as an agile coach or a
Oh,
seasoned agile
sorry, is
coach.
that
As you can see, I'm already dissociating myself from
you can't deny it. You can't get away. Your passes will follow you.
So, I think on a more serious note, I've always believed in far more agnostic terms in the sense I prefer
Mm,
words like better ways of working or smart ways of working and so on and so forth. Uh, in the sense that then you're not going in with a preconceived idea of how you can help or how a team or a division or a department can improve uh, their ways of working, right? So I think that's I think the starting point. And uh, but then we also need to recognize that a number of agile so-called transformations have started uh, on back of a fear of missing out of CXOs saying, oh, my competitor claims to have done this, or they have 100 agile squads, so I also need to do that. I think I discussed this with you before. One of the uh, divisions where I was about to help out or about to begin my assignment, and I had this initial conversation with the stakeholder whose opening line was I want my boss wants us to be agile in the next 2 quarters. Can you help us be agile? So that sort of gives you an idea how people have approached it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's something there's almost a clash here, isn't there? That when we talk about agile, we talk about principles. We talk about, what are the goals behind it? What is it that you want to achieve? And let's figure out a way together to get there. And so, Addy, you're saying you take out the word agile altogether. We just want to try and improve our way of working. And then that seems to clash directly with the typical sort of corporate culture, if I can generalize, which just thinks in terms of here's a thing we've got to do, let's get it done, tick it off, and then go on to the next thing. So it's almost like a from the outset, the mindset seems to be at odds with what we're talking about, principles and all this. So maybe it sounds too, I don't know, flaky to these people. I don't know.
Like if you went back a few decades back, I guess at least that was when at least 2 decades back when I just was starting off my career, sort of Lean Six Sigma and all the various colors of belts that would be associated with Six Sigma were quite in the vogue, and then of course Agile has taken over as an umbrella term, absorbing principles and ideas from various philosophies, including Lean, right? So, and then I think
Yeah.
there is a risk that, well, I think it's already happened that we've fallen into the same trap as well in
Yes.
terms of
Well, I suppose it's always a tightrope, isn't it? I'll come back to you, Chris, because how do you ever get any idea into a company without some kind of branding, some kind of
mm,
labels, some buzz around it? How do you do that? But at the same time, you run the risk of you know completely ruining the whole idea because it's overly attached to
right.
a brand.
Yeah, I think I'm going to oversimplify this. I'm busy writing a little book about this, by the way. I'm about
Oh,
5,000 words into it. So
nice.
there's a number of things, and I've got a concept which we'll talk about in another session. But I think that the other thing that people are talking about is this whole, or the coaches side of the argument talk about is resistance to change. People are not, they won't accept, don't understand why Agile is so brilliant and that. I think this is because we are, we, the coaching Agile community, are being too solution driven, right? If you think about it, Agile itself came up as a number of different methods or sets of practices which were a solution to a problem, right? Of very rigid engineering-led, plan-driven, waterfall style project management. And agile methods or lightweight methods, as they were called before the manifesto, they came up as a solution or an antidote to that, right? Agile itself is a solution to a problem. What I think we have forgotten, and I think the industry itself is to blame for this, for creating these branded frameworks. Here is a solution that we can teach, a number of people to use and understand, and we can then implement that in an organization as a solution. The problem, I believe, is when the solution becomes the objective. So when implementing Scrum across an IT group of 150 people becomes the objective of the transformation, right? How many teams can we tick the box and say, yes, you're agile, you're agile? Come back to Eddie's point of a few minutes ago. It's like, make my team agile by the second quarter of next year. Okay, great. Tick the boxes, right? Hey, great job. We've got agile teams there. What has actually changed in terms of the organizational performance? Usually very little, right? So I think the way to get around this is not to implement a brand or a framework, a method, anything like take the solution out of the equation. We have to get to a point where we can ask the teams, why do you want to go down this route? What does agile mean to you? What benefits do you think you're going to get from it? And let's hang the change on that, because if you've been around the block as long as we all have, you can pick and choose those principles, those practices, those methods, the role changes, the events, the meetings, all the artifacts, the tools, whatever is needed from whatever method to solve that particular problem, right? We can then,
Yes.
I think, be more effective in saying Agile works because it solves this problem. Now, imagine we've got this IT department where we as a group, we're going as a bunch of consultants, and we are hired by the CIO, CTO, and we have a conversation with him or her, and we ask what they want to get out of Agile, and they tell us, here's the things we need to get better at. We can then say, right, there's our objectives, and you get them to communicate this across the entire department. Here's what we need to get better at, folks. We need to improve A, B, C, D, and E. These are things we need to do. And we've got these consultants coming in. Those are the things we're going to help you do. If we can have that conversation, you've already entered the system. You've got a clear objectives in mind. And now we can say, right, we are going to not implement a framework for you. We're going to talk to every team, and we're going to say, what do these objectives mean to you? How good are you at doing those things? And what help do you need to make that? And then we'll implement whatever is necessary to make those changes. Does it mean we have to change everybody's roles and call them Scrum Masters instead of team leaders or whatever? No, we don't have to change anything. Only change what is needed in order to meet the objectives. That way, I believe the organization sees the positive change, because now we can say, have you achieved the objectives or not? And
Yes.
it's not just about implementing practice. Then we can then say, look, this is what we've done. It's actually better. And we
So
can roll that across
let me
other
come in on
departments.
that. So I mean, you could say, you could imagine, right, an agile coaching transformation group coming in and asking a department or an org, what do they want to get out of it? And they'll say, okay, we want increased quality or increased throughput or productivity, whatever it is. And then the teams will set those as goals for the teams, and the teams will go and figure it out. I
Yep.
wonder if I'll come to you, Addy, on this. Do you think, generally speaking, that if you put that to the leadership, that idea, let the teams figure out how to get there, they wouldn't have a whole hell of a lot of faith in them being able to do that in a timely fashion?
I think if we can just park that as well, I think we also need to recognize that I think as an industry we've been on this for many years now. Obviously, you had Agile, then DevOps, and various other principles and practices. So there is an element of transformation fatigue which need to acknowledge, and I think
Yes.
you want to just take a pause, take a deep breath, and then reevaluate. And you can see that's happening as well. So the nature of the roles as well are more delivery oriented in terms of let's get the job done kind of and let's be a lot more pragmatic about coaching, etc., or just transformation pieces. And then of course for CIOs there's always the new or CXOs there's always the new shining thing, say AI or anything else, and then you have to reprioritize your investments in those new areas. So I think there's an element of that's what definitely happening. We need.
I agree totally with that. The whole transformation fatigue is a big thing.
Yes.
And I think that's another reason to support what I'm suggesting, which is we are not transforming anything.
Yeah.
We are simply evolving to improve. It's small scale change at a team level almost. So if that department, let's say this fictitious 150 people team, are united by a set of 3 to 5 objectives that are set by the CXO, and those objectives are communicated every week in every town hall, in newsletters, in blogs, in email flyers, in posters, everything. This is what we need to get better at. And you have someone who is measuring those things across the team and saying, here's what you need to get better. And just publishing, here's how we're doing in those things. All we are doing is talking to teams and saying, how well are you doing on those 5 objectives? I'm here to help you to meet those objectives. They're not my objectives. They're things that have been set by the organization. We're not going to change everything overnight. I'm not going to change your role. I'm not going to tell you what meetings you need to have. I'm not going to, change the tool set you use. All I'm going to do is we're going to figure out how to make improvements within your context. Because let's face it, we know that different teams do different types of work in different environments, in different situations, and so forth. So we have to be context aware when you're making change.
I think,
And if you had that set up, do you think any company would even hire a coach? If
well,
this is just an ongoing thing, like we always want to continuously improve. These are our metrics. You as a team go figure it out. What would that look like? Would there be a space for a coach in all of that?
I believe there would, simply because the status quo is powerful enough to say we know what we're doing, and simply saying get better doesn't really help. So I think if you have someone there to, and this doesn't need a full-time role, by the way, in this sort of model, you can literally have someone meeting with the team for a couple of hours in a week, say, and talking to them and saying to them, right, this week we're going to talk about principle number 1. What's principle number 1? In my set of principles in the book, which will coming out in a while, it will be prioritized by value. All right, because we want you to concentrate on value delivery, and we need to prioritize your work according to value, right? What's getting in your way of doing that? Well, I don't know how to prioritize. Okay, that's one thing. What does value mean to us? That's another thing. We can help coach you through those things. We can help you understand what value means in your context, because that's not company-wide. We can help you to understand the different methods of prioritization, figure out what works with you. Therein the coaching works.
So Chris, I think partly, I think we also need to acknowledge that a lot of this is happening at team level and probably teams levels. I think the problem has shifted to a higher level of abstraction, in the sense that I think there are issues that need to be solved at a division level or at an organizational level, right? So obviously, when we talk about business agility, it's not a team sport. It's an entire firm that needs to get involved. So I think and then that's where we're going to hit, and we are hitting some serious pockets of resistance, if you like, right? So
absolutely.
But
if you think again,
sorry, go on, Chris.
Sorry, Andy. If you think again what we said at the beginning about why we think Agile is dead, it's because it's not working. It's because the way we've implemented it, one size does not fit all. We can't apply the same solution to everywhere in the organization. That, I think, is causing this resistance to change. Whereas if we give people a principle to meet, and we measure that principle, if you like, the outcomes of that, and you have someone to help the teams figure out, the teams generally to figure out these things, I think you're much more likely to get effective change. It's not about letting people figure things out for themselves entirely, because some of them will do. I mean, as long as you have the knowledge. I mean, there's another way of doing this, if you like. If you want a product to sell, what if we had an AI tool that was specifically geared around agile methods and had a conversation with people? So what we could do is say, like, we've facilitated with leadership the principles that we need you to follow, and if that is the edict, if you like, from leadership, you automatically overcome a fair amount of that resistance to change. It's not an external person coming and telling us how to do things. It's an internal organizational focused set of objectives. That overcomes a fair amount of it. The fact that you have given the teams autonomy to figure some of this out themselves gives them some mastery about what is it. We've given them the purpose. We've now set them up with autonomy to you guys can figure this out along with your coaches. And you can get better at what you do and you can learn things. And if you then give them an AI tool and say your principle is being given by leadership, the possible practices, the set of practices that you have that go along with that, right, are here. Utilize your AI tool to be able to come up with details and have a conversation about here's what we do. How do I make that practice? No, that won't work because what else can you suggest? Blah, 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 blah. And you come up with a couple of things. And then we can help teach the people to iterate, to reflect, to retrospect, and to constantly improve. I think when you have that alignment of purpose, autonomy, mastery, you get people being able to do that. I think you overcome to a great extent the resistance to change, but also
Yes.
you can set those objectives at whatever level you need to.
I mean, it's always I always slightly uncomfortable with the phrase resistance to change.
I know. Yes.
Because
That's
I'm always resistant to any change unless I'm involved in that change, and
that's exactly right.
And I think that's one of the key points that
Yeah.
if we feel we have some agency in that change,
Yes.
then it's
Agreed.
a whole different kettle of fish. I just wanted to ask though, you think about just implementing Scrum or whatever. It seems so simple. I've heard people explain Scrum in 2 minutes, 2-minute audio, bang.
Easy.
Why? Surely some people must be thinking, why is it so hard? What? I mean, this must be a failure on the grounds that it's just so hard to do.
Yep, and it is. And it is a failure on the ground to a certain degree. But I think because of this, if you think about it, Scrum is I forget the word now. In something, it means you can't be changed. Can't remember the word.
Non-fungible. I don't know.
There's a better word for it.
Yeah.
It's basically it's a set of rules, and the Scrum guide actually says if you change the rules, you're doing something, but you're not doing the Scrum. You have to follow the rule book, right? The problem I come across is, and I'll just quote one example, you have to have a single product owner interacting with the team, okay? Now, we've both come across a number of teams, many teams that don't have a single product owner because of the structure of the whole organization, right? Imagine the resistance to change when they tell a team, you have to have a product owner. I have to tick that box that says you have to be agile, you have to have a product owner. It says, but I've got 8. What do you want me to do? Right? Just nominate one. It doesn't matter. Just tick the box that says you've got a product owner. That's why you create this resistance to change. That's why people are saying, this is rubbish. Scrum is nonsense. It doesn't work.
I think there's a risk we get into a bit of a war of methodologies here, but
It's not the intention.
But I think the thing of Scrum is you're right. It sounds so simple, but so does making money in the stock market, right? You just buy you buy low and sell high, right? So it sounds easy.
No, I think maybe that's even easier, to be honest, than Scrum. Might be quicker to make money out of that. Yeah.
But I think one of the big parts is the role changes that we go in and then it goes back to your point, Haran, which is everyone loves change as long as it's happening to someone else, right? So I think that's the thing with Scrum. You just go in and say, okay, you're not project manager anymore. You shall be called Scrum Master from there.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate that. I go in, you get your routine, you know what you're doing, you know where you are, and suddenly somebody says, "Oh no, this is different now."
Yeah,
get lost. Who the hell are you?
But you take that point, and if the organization, if the leadership, I mean, imagine that we're the consultants and we've had this conversation with leadership, and the problem they say, let's say we're after this facilitated workshop, one of the things they talk about is one of our biggest problems is we keep shipping code that no one uses. Let's imagine that, okay? Because we've had a look at all the lines of code, and we've looked at what people are using and what they're not using, and a lot of the recent stuff we've shipped out, nobody's using it, okay? We can say we have answers to that problem, okay?
Yeah.
I don't have to implement SAFe in order to solve that particular problem.
Yeah.
Boom, there goes 90% of your resistance to change.
Yes.
Right? So let's just implement specific practices to solve that problem. And we can do it in a tiny fraction of the time, at a tiny fraction of the cost, and we'll be effective at doing it. I think that's the answer.
So
It's
just
the
to
whole.
yeah, just to
Sorry.
balance the argument, let's use Kanban as an example, so that we
Yeah.
can just
Yeah.
tie ourselves to Scrum.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Kanban approach to change would be typically, let's start with visualization of work. Let's not do
Yeah.
too many changes.
Yeah.
Let's hope that visualization you do causes some amount of irritation to the team and to you, because you see things are falling
Yeah.
apart, things flowing through your workflow, and then you then hopefully that will nudge you and then irritate you enough to make some changes. So
Yeah.
and then you start increasingly adding and layering other practices.
Yes.
But then at some point you still have to hit some really difficult ones. WIP limits is a typical example if you go down the
Yeah.
Kanban route. So everyone's claims to be doing Kanban till you start doing
Yes,
WIP,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's
it's
when the pain hits home.
I know.
I mean, how many Kanban teams are actually doing Kanban?
Yeah,
Or just saying, "Oh, just we're
they're
not doing
mostly pro,
sprints. We're
they're
not doing
mostly pro
Yeah.
sprints."
Kanban. Yeah, indeed. So I think it comes down to that, but I think I also want to jump back to the original point about context, right? That Chris, you mentioned, right? So we need to respect the context,
Yeah.
which I think is still a problem to be solved, but which is still at team levels, right? So in the sense, for instance, we've all been there where you just can't take literature and language customized for software development teams and then take it to service management context and then
Agreed.
exploit them, right? So, and we've seen this, right? The people will turn around and say, hang on, this, you've just, they can see through this. They can say you've given,
Yeah.
you've just taken the terminology from software development, just changed a few words here and there. It doesn't suit us. So you need to, the way we work is different. We have different ways of working. We don't do software. I'm sure you heard that term. We just deliver services. So I think that's one level of
Yeah.
respecting context. But I think
So
the
Agreed.
other angle I was referring to is the fact that we just need to take this problem up the hierarchy in the organization. So I think you've got senior leaders or management teams, middle management, they all also need to start applying some of these principles and practices, right? So only then,
yes,
you get true organizational agility.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the beauty of some of the the lean approach is it isn't specifying specific activities. It's just saying let's get a view of what's happening and identify the weak point and try and do something about that.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
there's an elegant simplicity to that, isn't there?
Absolutely. And when I mentioned the fact that I'm writing this book about the whole a new approach to agile adoption, if you like, I've taken a fair amount of stuff from Lean. In fact, the second principle that I've put in there is visualize all the work and dependencies, which is directly from Lean, and it's because of the power that you get from doing that. And
Yes.
if you tell people prioritize by value, a lot of teams are going to say, don't know what that means, don't care about it. If you ask them to visualize your work, it's like, don't understand what that means, don't care, right? Which is where you have to have the organization, and I'll talk about leadership here, C-suite level, head of level, saying you have to do these things. These are principles that we have agreed with our consultants. This is a necessary. You have to be. This is where we need to improve. Okay, you've got objectives now. You've got purpose. You've got
Yes.
mission. With that in mind, with that as the target, we can utilize all those lovely Kanban mechanisms, which is a better
Yes.
word, I think, in order to drive towards that. That is totally right on that. And yes, while it to me the benefit is that we don't have to say we're implementing Kanban. It means we don't have to put a brand on it because of
Yes.
the brand creates a toxicity after a
Yes.
while.
Yes.
You've got something to blame. Whereas if you are completely agnostic in your terminology and your language, and all you're doing is helping the guys improve what they do, starting from where they are, right,
Yeah.
and simply evolving the changes the way a Kanban management professional does, this is it. I'm utilizing the mindset and the philosophy of the Kanban management professional to evolve practice but I'm saying it's not about becoming lean and agile. It's about solving specific problems. And I think if the whole industry were to look at the whole thing about what problems are we trying to solve rather than we have to implement in our framework, I think that we will be a lot more more effective at doing that. And I agree with all those people who say agile transformations are dying, and maybe they should.
Yes.
Maybe it should all come back to basics and say, what problems are we trying to solve here? Let's start solving problems.
I mean, just one thing on that. If we're saying agile is dead or dying, the implication is that it was alive at some point. What do you think? Was agile ever alive?
Eddie?
I think say yes. I would say yeah. At least going by the
For a fleeting moment.
Yeah. I would say going by the proliferation of roles that we've seen over the last few years, it's like people prefixing or suffixing agile before and after everything. It's like the dialogue from Ant-Man, if you remember. I don't know if you're fans of Marvel, where I think one of the characters says, "Do you guys just put quantum before everything?" So it's
yes.
that you guys just put agile before everything. So that's where we were at one point.
I think we definitely went through that phase. Absolutely. You know, we've had people saying we don't plan because we're agile.
Yes.
You know, we don't do documentation because we're agile. It's these kind of silly phrases that people have picked up that say, "Oh, I like that one. It means I don't have to do all the stuff I don't like to do.
Yes.
Therefore, I can use that as an excuse, right? And I'll blame it on agile." None of it is helpful, but I'm sure you have, as I certainly have, experienced and worked with teams who I can genuinely call agile. People who had on-site customers, to use the XP term. People who where the customer was literally down the hall, right? Not even on a different floor. They're right there, where you met with them 3 or 4 times a day. You got constant feedback on product roadmap, on requirements, on testability, on code, all of that stuff. Very, very short feedback loops. You had, multiple deployments per week. Really great agile and very low amount of defects, very high quality stuff going. All of this stuff is what agile was intended to do. There are a lot of teams doing all of that, and it's just business as usual. They don't even call it agile anymore. It's just the way we work.
Yes.
Right. And those companies, and I don't have the data to back this up, but I believe that those companies are ones that do the type of work and are the sort of scale where there are in an agile sweet spot. It's the ones where the guys who wrote the manifesto imagined this type of team. They're doing this type of work, and this is what they need to do. And those people who have adopted, in the cases I'm thinking of, Kanban or Spotify model, they've done all this stuff and they've said, this stuff works, let's keep it, let's embrace it, let's put it in our corporate playbook, if you like. And they are very, very good at what they do. They are very, very agile. And it's like, applause, guys, you've done a great job.
Right.
It exists, it was alive, and it's alive and well in certain places.
Addy, I'm going to come to you for to close things out. Final thoughts.
I think we can be here forever, right? I think we can continue the conversation. I think there's a few threads we can perhaps pick up, and maybe if there's another conversation, we can do that, right? So agile and AI, for instance, that's an interesting thread on its own. Transformation fatigue. Hopefully, we've discussed that enough. But then, what's the new agile, or do we just have something without the word, as some new white label product, I guess, and where context fills in the brand? Perhaps that's something we need to look at. Yeah, but I think there's lots of interesting threads from here. Yeah. What you had,
gentlemen? Thank you very much.
It's been great. Thanks, Addy, and thank you, Aaron.
Cheers, guys.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.